This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London.
Good afternoon, everyone. As agreed at the Assembly's annual meeting on the 10th of May 2024, the Confirmations Hearings Committee is allowed to appoint a chair on a meeting-by-meeting basis for the 24-25 Assembly year. For the first item of business, I will conduct an election for the chair for this meeting in accordance with the GLA's standing orders. In the event of one candidate being nominated, I will declare the nominated candidate chair of the Confirmation Hearings Committee for this meeting. A proposer and seconder is required for each nomination. In the event of two candidates being nominated, I will ask for votes in favour of each candidate. Are there any nominations?
I propose Assemblymember Baker.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to second that nomination?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. And can I ask if there are any other nominations? Then I declare that Assemblymember Baker is elected Chair of the Confirmation Hearings Committee for today's meeting.
Thank you and good afternoon. Can I now welcome everyone to this meeting of the Confirmation Hearings Committee. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. And can I now ask our clerk, Lauren Harvey, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Assemblymember Garrett, for whom Assemblymember Prince is substituting, Assemblymember Russell, for whom Assemblymember Polanski is substituting, and Assemblymember Small-Edwards, for whom Assemblymember Desai is substituting. In accordance with Standing Order 8.2 and with the permission of the Chair, Assemblymember Bakari is attending the meeting as a non-voting observer.
Thank you. And can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 3 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Thank you. And can I also invite Suki Kalarai to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to the proposed appointment?
I have none.
Thank you. And can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of May 2024? Now, can I ask, apology? Thank you. Can I now welcome properly Suki Kalarai to this meeting? Thank you. Thank you for being here and joining us today. The committee will be putting questions to you in relation to the proposed appointment to the office of Chair of the LLDC. However, can I first ask members to note the background information circulated within the agenda for the meeting and the additional information received after publication of the agenda? Yeah. Thank you. We'll now move on to the question and answer session. So I'll be asking the first question and then questions will come from the rest of the committee members. Thank you. So first question, nice, obvious introductory one. What experience and attributes would you bring to the role of Chair of the LLDC?
I think from the view from the outside is the range of sectors I've been involved in, the range of activities that I suppose I've conducted, which allows me to look at something with such a diverse offering, both from a customer, consumer, and business-to-business perspective that the park offers. So I think the ability to be able to navigate all of those interests across a wide stakeholders is probably the overriding aspects that you do it. And then the second one would be relatively straightforward, is the desire for everybody to get LLDC to be breaking even as soon as possible. And obviously most of my life has been spent in commercial organisations where break even is quite important, or profit is quite important. So hopefully I've got the skills to be able to do that.
Apologies. And we will be asking you some more questions on some of those subjects again. So now I'd like to pass over to Assembly Member Bakari.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is on the challenges of this role as the Chair of the LLDC. Could you tell me something about what you think those challenges may be and how you would overcome these?
I think it's a complex situation in terms of stakeholders. It's a complex situation in terms of operating profitability, and it's a complex situation in terms of regeneration needs in the marketplace that we find ourselves, particularly on housing at this point in time. So how would I overcome those? We clearly have to work with the stakeholders, all stakeholders, to make that possible. Work with the board and collaborate with the executive team and lead them into trying to find ways through that are perhaps new ways of looking at the whole exercise. Some of those may be commercial interests, some of those may be changing the way that we looked at various assets. But at this stage, given I'm an outside appointment, not somebody who's got all the detail from the inside, I'm kind of relatively relaxed about the objectives, the key priorities that's been sent to you. Those are my objectives, if you like. But out of those, which ones come first? What balance do we want to operate with? And what are the things that are most important? They're all things I could certainly have a session in 6 months with you and say, this is where I think the balance lies. But at this stage, I'll be saying, I accept the charge that's been put forward in front of me. But I reserve the right to come back and revise those at some stage if I think it's appropriate within your objectives.
Do you feel that there may be times where you may be challenged by us or by the Mayor of London? How will you deal with those kind of situations? If it can get a little bit tense sometimes if there's disagreements.
Sure. I mean, I think in the career I've had so far, both as an executive and a non-executive, there are always challenges. So some of those are friendly, some of those are less friendly. And the context really here is doing the right thing for the LLDC and Londoners as a whole, but particularly the stakeholders that are important to the park. And yeah, I expect challenges. I don't think it's going to be a situation where people are going to give a soft, easy ride to such a complex project that's costing a lot of money. But as long as the benefits continue to outweigh the long-term costs, then it's something that we should be pursuing.
Great, thank you. Well, I look forward to the continuing challenge that we will be putting across the table at a later stage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is related to the kind of evolution of the kind of role of LLDC itself, and how you would help make that happen. So it's as we know, it's the planning powers are being transferred back to the relevant for London Borough authorities from later in this year. So what would you do to help make sure that's a smooth transition and there's a clear kind of understanding of new decision-making processes going forwards?
I mean, we all know that planning doesn't work in short-term intervals. So in that sense, the short-term things that need to be approved, as I understand it, are approved. What happens in the medium term, and I'm talking 3, 5, 7 years away, are things that we need to develop, and I think they will be developed with those boroughs so that it's mutually beneficial to both the park and the residents and the borough itself. So that way it will be a common interest to be able to move that forward if there's a new project. But given that the break-even part of the equation is something that's everyone's going to be driving towards, anything that helps accelerate that is surely going to be welcomed by all parties.
Thank you. I have a follow-up which actually links very nicely to your first kind of statement about long-term decisions and the need to be mindful of how those kind of influence. So I'm obviously conscious that the boundaries of the LLDC area are being reduced as well, so this site no longer falls within it. But I'm very, very pleased to see in some of the briefing documents that we've been presented with that one of the key objectives now, and I think probably the most important objective above all others, is about driving growth and inward investment to East London. I'd be keen to hear if you had any thoughts on how we could prevent a similar massive missed opportunity like the MSG Sphere from happening again. That was a really exciting project, hasn't happened, won't happen. How could we make sure that actually attracting real private investment to do exciting things won't be missed again?
I mean, I'm not familiar with the details of what went right and wrong, if you like, with that particular project in the Sphere. What I can say is that with complex stakeholders, you have to engage them all the way along the process. And if something comes out left field that is an opportunity, get their buy-in at an early stage is very important. So that's what essentially the chair and the board are there to try and make sure the stakeholders are collaborating all the way through. In that sense, we're quite lucky in that the mayors of the 3 London boroughs plus the deputy mayor from the GLA are on the board. So there shouldn't be anything new or difficult coming out that people aren't aware of along the way. And I think the Sphere and the West Ham situation are all historical situations that we can learn from and say, what is it that we want to avoid happening in the future, that are lessons learned from that, if you like, in terms of behaviours. I have yet to meet the mayors of the 3 London boroughs, but that's in the diary for once this process is over and hopefully it goes through positively. Then I will certainly, and I've said in my opening statement, that I'm keen to listen to what they see and what they want from the park. And obviously it's a two-way exercise. But in short, the answer to your question is we have to work together because no one can achieve this on their own.
Thank you, Assembly Member. And Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. As we've already touched on, there will be a reduction in the LLDC's responsibilities. I'll come to the stadium in a minute, but obviously the shifting of the planning powers away from the LLDC. Clearly, one would assume that will mean there will be a reduction in staff. And I just wonder whether you'd given any thought to how you're going to manage that, because I've always found employing staff is a lot easier than reducing staff.
I mean, that activity is well in motion already. So the organisation downsizing, the numbers are agreed, the budgets are agreed in principle, the people who are staying in post and which ones will be moving on is agreed, the new chief executive replacing the old chief executive who's moving on is agreed. So that activity, I'm sort of pleased to say, is quite a long way down happening. And I've only had one meeting in the office, but so far there's a very comfortable acceptance from the team about what's going to happen. There, when you get change of that level, normally there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of misguidance, but there's none of that present in what I've seen so far. And I've been through enough of them to be able to pick up the signs when those things aren't right. So in that sense, I'm very pleased. Can I give you assurances on that those people are on the right post and they're all the right people? No, because I haven't spent time with them at this stage. But I can't, so far everything I've seen it's a really good, solid group of people that have done a fantastic job in terms of their attachment, both emotionally and professionally to what they're doing.
Obviously, part of the change will be the moving the stadium, or the E20, the company that runs the stadium, out of your organisation and into the GLA Holdings. Again, do you foresee any issues with that? Do you think that would be a smooth transition? And of course, with this massive reduction in staff, it also means senior management may be thinned out a bit as well?
I mean, I think that there will be some, inevitably with a change like that, there will be some people who will feel that they've lost some important aspect of their transition. I think overall, the amount of energy and time that particular part of the project takes up is a good thing for us not to be distracted by day-to-day and all the other things that we need to do. Are there going to be areas that are going to be conflicts potentially overlapping? We're in the same geography, we're in the same space. You know, are there going to be areas that we need to conflict? Well, I think that's something I need to give some thought to between now and March when it happens, that to make sure that we minimise those risks. But you can't foresee everything. But the biggest thing is to make sure that things like naming rights, we have a clarity on how we can do and what we can do and how we're going to work on that. And that, you know, it's those sorts of things that operationally I don't see much of an issue, but maybe strategically there are some points.
On the naming rights, that really won't be your bag anymore, will it? Because that will go with the E20, I assume.
Well, we will collaborate. If it's naming rights for one aspect only, but it has implications for the whole park, so
Right.
we will absolutely work on things like that together.
So losing the stadium, of course, will help you to get towards a parity on your budget, because that's quite a large drain on the LLDC's resources. And obviously a lot of time is going to be spent by you initially. Can I ask you, and I probably should have asked earlier, but it's still relevant to this, what other responsibilities or positions will you hold? Are you planning to hold other chairmanships or executive roles while you're doing this? And do you see this taking up a lot of time initially that then will spread out?
The way I do non-execs is that I tend to allow 6 to 9 months where I'm heavily involved, really getting to know that business really well, much more akin to how an executive would understand the business. And then I pull back from that to make sure that the executive are allowed to do their job, because that's, you know, my job is not an executive role. I'm currently chair of a housing association called Paragon Asra, which actually has 60% of the estate within the GLA boundary, and the rest is in the Midlands, in the East Midlands. I'm also I'm on non-exec director of Housing 21, which is the oldest provider, which is a provider for older people of modest means. So there's a large provider of retirement living and extra care facilities, and I'll be vice chairman of that probably from September. But I know that organisation and the other organisation well. I've been on 2 years and 4 years on their board. So I think I have comfortable capacity for 4 roles, depending on what happens. But if something goes wrong in one of those roles, then you alter your time. Technically, this should take 4 days, a month of my time. That's not going to be the case for the next 6 months, certainly. But you know, once it's settled, that's where it'd be. But I wouldn't expect this to settle quite as easily as those other organisations, because there are so many more moving parts to this.
That was the follow-up, really. Sorry, I've just one final question. Initially, and I accept all the points you make about initial burst and then feathering off. Initially, how much time do you think this will take? How much have you planned into your...
If I look at my diary, then it's probably 60% of my weeks from now till Christmas. But that's fine.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. So you already sort of told us that you'll be meeting the 3 mayors and they're on the board. But can I just put this to you formally? What are your plans for establishing and developing good relationships with the boroughs under the LLDC area? And also, the second part of the question, what's your overall vision for the LLDC once planning powers are returned to the boroughs?
So I've never had a role, including the housing associations, where I had planning powers. So in that sense, I don't see that as being a major change from the things I've done before, whether that's in the hotel world or whether that's in the housing world. That's the norm, if you like. So yes, it's a movement of control, but if we're doing the right things, it shouldn't be a barrier to what we're trying to do. Okay, so that's that bit. My relationship is going to be very much with the chairs, with the mayors and the chief executives, and the team will have relationships further down the organisation in each of those boroughs. I will happily spend as much time as needed to form the relationships, get to where we want to get to, but but not take over executive responsibilities on the day-to-day stuff. So clearly the current team have good relationships, working relationships with the boroughs. Enhancing and continuing those is what my objective would be. In terms of the third part of your question, you asked what I see the overall vision for LLDC. At this stage, it's delivering those priorities that were sent to you as on this piece of paper. So that's what I see my overall vision. But the reality is that London already has one of the best legacy programs in the world. How can we make that even better? What can we do to make that a fantastic, long-lasting, freestanding, financially independent park? That's ultimately what I'd like to do. And what can I help accelerate on that journey to get there?
Sir, I'm pleased to hear that you say acknowledge there is a legacy, because I personally very strongly believe there is a legacy. Yeah. It is no ordinary park, as the author and blogger Dave Hill says. In fact, that's the title of his book. So we are now entering the third phase of No Ordinary Park. So the first phase was the games itself, winning the bid, and I was lucky enough to be a Newham councillor in those years, so things at first hand, and I was also the planning committee of Newham that gave permission to a lot of the developments. So the first phase was the build-up to the games. The second phase was after 2012, and we are now entering, I think, a third distinctive phase. But it still remains the fact that LLDC has still got to sell itself. I mean, how do you intend going around selling LLDC to the wider public, and especially the East London growth boroughs? Of course, if you ask people in a lot of the neighbouring boroughs, about the park, the many opportunities it offers, I don't think they still are fully aware. Yep. I think there's still a big PR job to be done.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, as you probably saw in my early stages of my career, I grew through marketing. So in that sense, I'm quite familiar with the challenges of marketing a venue, if you like, in this particular instance. The venue being the entirety, not just one aspect of the legacy. I think, frankly, making sure the stakeholders want to be part of that and how you deliver that, and the stakeholders are beyond the boroughs themselves, because the operators of the venues, it's the Westfield Shopping Centre, it's the station and the infrastructure around the station. It's about making all of those things want to be part of the whole. So I think there's going to be some time that we need to spend in coalescing some sort of program that allows people to feel that it's collaboratively positive for them to be part of that. I think there's quite a lot of things that are individual at the moment. Can we bring that together in some way, shape or form? I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you in a year's time that I think we have a chance, or I think we have very little chance. But that would be the ideal scenario. But from a public point of view, as opposed to the stakeholders that are more immediate, from the public point of view, the best thing we can do is make it a fantastic destination that they enjoy and visit. And that's equally true of people who are local as it is for people who are further afield. The more further afield people we can get in to contribute to the economy locally, the better it is for the local people. The more local people that can use the facilities and enjoy them, the better it is for their own communities. So creating that sense of community, but at the same time making it into a great destination is probably the two things from a public point of view I'd love to do.
Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bakari.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking about housing, and I'm looking at your statement here, and it says that you have experience in managing both social and commercial house building in the northwest of England and in Wales, but not in London. Am I correct in saying that?
The commercial house builder was in northwest of England and Wales, but the social house builders are absolutely, I'm 60% in London, probably one of them that I chair. So that's a big London operator, and Housing 21 is a national operator.
Right, so you do have a fairly large responsibility here in terms of the LLDC. It's in the local plan with an expectation of 33,000 homes that are to be built within the area. Now, firstly, do you think you can reach that target? But also the key aim for the Mayor of London is to make sure that 50% of all new homes are affordable.
Yeah. The answer to can I reach 33,000 homes in my tenure, I doubt, but we'll try. Is that a good ambition long term, not just for the restricted area of the park, but the greater area that it affects? I think the number so far achieved is about just under 6,000. So are in planning or being made at this point in time. So that's a good way along the road in terms of making a dent into that. We're hitting a perfect storm in terms of housing generally in London right at this point in time. The economic pressures, the sale of shared ownership is declining, and there are some challenges. So my honest answer to you is whatever we can do, we will do in the sensible time frame, but we'll have to balance the needs of how much cash needs to be injected versus what we have to give away, and what that means to the overall budget.
So there's a little bit of caution there about the time frame here. Is that what you're saying?
I think if we looked at the housing market, as we know, is cyclical. We're not looking at the best parts of the cycle right now. So inevitably, if we're looking at the cycle right now, we need to be a bit more cautious than perhaps we were 5 years ago.
Because the target is 2036 here on the plan.
Yeah. However, if you're looking at the cycle, is the cycle going to go the other way? Inevitably, it will. It's a question of when. And then doing the right ventures, making the right agreements to get those plans going positively forward is very important. Affordable it's a good definition in the way that we all talk about it and social housing companies talk about it. Affordable housing in the real sense of London and Greater London, we know is an altogether more complex subject. Within the context of how we all talk about it and how we define it in terms of the targets, I think it's a more achievable target in terms of making it genuinely affordable to Londoners.
That's always the term, isn't it? Whether it's genuine. Not easy. No.
I think it's tough. But we're not going to back away from those challenges.
Okay.
We're just going to make sure they're balanced in how we try and achieve them.
On the local plan, now the LLDC had complied to the policy of S12, which is maintaining a safe and secure environment within the East Village area in Stratford so that it's resilient against emergencies and threats. Now, are you aware of the Olympic Parks Homes Action Group?
I have the smallest couple of sentences on it, so if I may, that's a level of detail that I in a few days I've not been able to get into, but give me some time. And
so the residents from the East Village, which is the legacy of the Olympic residences of the athletes who stayed during the Olympic Games, have been in incredibly tense and anxious times recently because of the remediation of a cost of £150 million, which is basically to deal with the flammable cladding that is covering these buildings. Now, a lot of the people who live there are key workers, teachers, people who, in NHS. This is not affordable for them, for the leaseholders themselves to pay for them. And many of them feel trapped. They can't move on. They can't sell. They can't, it's a horrible situation. I'm sure you're aware that we're going to have a Grenfell report coming through this week as well. So this is on the minds of many of the residents.
It is. Unfortunately, it's outside of the remit of the LLDC's control. That's to do with the particular overall owner of that area, and that's where the arguments and decisions need to be made. We can use whatever influence we have with them, but we're not empowered to be able to make any decisions on that area.
So yes, I mean, Peter Hendy, who your predecessor, has written to me about these lines that are there. That doesn't really help the situation for the residents who are living there right now, and they need as much support as they possibly can. And there is a role here for the LDC to be able to at least alleviate some of the stresses and strains and give information, support, advice, and ways through this. This is an incredibly difficult time for them. Will you at least meet some of the residents and to discuss the issues that they're dealing with?
Absolutely no problem with meeting them, as long as it's contributing to the likelihood of success in those discussions. What I don't want to do is become part of the problem. what I want to do is try and find solutions that are positive. So
I think at least a meeting. I know you're not going to make any promises,
No.
but a meeting is something that I think they
well,
would really
I'm happy
appreciate.
to say I'll meet them and I'll meet the people who are in the decision-making process. And the reason I say that is coming from a social housing background chair, where we also have fire remediation programs ongoing, it is a complex situation. So their position is the same as many other people in similar situations, not just in London, but in the country as a whole. And we need a collective solution to all of those problems rather than tackling them one by one.
Well, if you're successful becoming chair, let's see that happen. Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And Assemblymember Polanski.
Thank you. Afternoon. You've mentioned your background in marketing. You've talked about financial independence for the area and also it being an attractive destination. It sounds like you're planning to strengthen the commercial success of LLDC. If that is your intention, how are you planning to do that? And how will you make sure that it's relying less on the public purse?
I think that's a really good question. How would you like to address you, Zach? Zach, would you like to call you Zach?
Zach
or
is fine.
Zach? Okay. Zach, I think that's a really good question. I honestly, it will be months before I can say where the areas where, because what's been done so far is very, very good at many levels. Understanding what, with the benefit of hindsight, what we could do slightly differently to get commercial independence. What are those things? I don't know yet, but give me a year.
Thank you. How do you plan to repay, if you're successful, repay the £500 million of public money that is owed to the GLA?
I think the first priority is to be break even on the operating side. That's the most important thing. So Londoners are not subsidising the operating side of the business. I think the repayment schedule is much longer in terms of the requirements for that 500 million to be paid back, but that is in the plans, absolutely.
Thank you. I also want to pick up on the MSG sphere, but from a slightly different end of the political spectrum, because I think this is a catastrophic idea, and I was glad to see it off. Now, the conversation we've just had about wanting to make financial independence is the kind of thing I think that makes this attractive. But I think if money had been spent talking to local residents, or not even money, if people had gone to speak to local residents much earlier, this could have been avoided. What will you do to make sure that local communities are consulted, spoken to, feel like they're included with the development of their own area?
I think if there aren't good enough listening forums at the moment, I will certainly make sure there are more. But the key thing is to work with the local 3 boroughs to make sure that they are helping bring that voice to our thinking collectively. Because in a sense, there's a double layer of involvement here. There's us listening to what the borough leaders are saying to us, but also us collectively, both the leaders and us, listening to what the residents want. So it's the 2 parts of the cooperation that are important.
Thank you. I've spent the last week in Paris at the Paralympics, 26 gold medals. Sorry, just had to get that in there. Amazing. Not me personally, but Team GB. Claim credit for anything. It was all me. But what I really noticed in Paris, cycling around, was the walking, wheeling and cycling, and where they're really working towards being an inclusive city. What plans do you have for LLDC to make sure we are that inclusive world city?
So it's already I mean, I went round by bike on my induction tour to try and get round as much of the site as I could, and that was very encouraging as to how friendly it was in terms of being able to use it. And walking, it's very friendly, it's very positive in terms of the way the walkways and those things are. So I think continuing that development long term, both from a point of view of usability, but also from a point of view of making it friendly in the less unfriendly climates, if you like, when it's appropriate, is going to be the challenge. I don't know how we're going to achieve that, but we need to make it. Obviously, Westfield is incredibly friendly for bad weather, but the rest of the park needs to be more allow for those movements in different times of the year.
Thank you. A whole conversation we could have about trees, but I'll maybe have it at a later stage. I won't try the patience of everyone. Just 2 last questions. So the conduct of the former chair was brought into question, or that there were certainly questions. How will you balance your other roles with this public role? And do you have any examples of where you've had to use the Nolan principles in public life?
I suppose I've held roles. So I can't talk about, and I haven't even read what those challenges were around Lord Peter Hendy's conduct. All I can say is that in my dealings with him, he's been incredibly values-led and incredibly positive. So he has made himself available, even though he's a minister, to be able to do the handover properly, because he's passionate about this programme and he's passionate about what he and the team have done and what you've all allowed him and facilitated for him to do. I've not come across many ministers in my dealings of the last 40 years that make that much time to make sure that the handover runs well. So I think his heart's in the right place. I think in terms of what I would do, I think one of the things I said at the beginning to the first question was the range of activities I've done is quite broad, and quite a lot of those being either governmental or semi-governmental positions. So nodal principles of public life have been familiar to me for at least 25 years. And every day in those 25 years, you make sure you're on the right side of doing the right things in terms of things. But the conflicts for me are almost zero. So there's no real issues that housing associations I chair have nothing inside of the jurisdiction that I'm going to be looking after. So there's no conflicts in that part. There are no funding conflicts. There are, at this point in time, I can't see any area that I'm going to need to be tread carefully on. But I would simply recuse myself from anything as soon as I see it something's inappropriate.
Not quite a conflict, but if you did have a contractor, say, and they were working in another role and you disagreed with something they said, how might you deal with that?
I think that's slightly different. So, I mean, none of the joint venture partner and contractors at the moment that are working inside the LLDC are contracted, as far as I'm aware, with any of the other businesses that I'm involved with. But if they did something that was inappropriate, I deal with things in isolation. It's a different set of drawers. You deal with that on that basis, and that's a different set of objectives over there. But if I need to recuse myself from those discussions, then I would.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Assemblyman Polanski, that's the end of the drafted questions. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask? Last knockings? No? Well, those are all the questions we have today for you. Thank you very much. And so thank you, Suki Kalarai, for attending today's meeting. And you can now leave. But if you would like to sit, if you want to observe the committee while we debate, you are actually allowed to go and do that in the public gallery, should you wish to sit and watch people talk about you. But then the committee, sorry, if I could ask you to leave while we...
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank you. So the committee, apologies, Assembly members, the committee is now required to make a decision on its recommendation to the Mayor as to whether the nominee should be appointed as chair of the LLDC. Do any Assembly members have anything to say?
Don't think we've got any concerns. Seems to be on top of it, although he's only not even got the job yet. So, yeah, it's okay with me.
Any comments? No? Okay. I'll wait for Lauren to get a seat. So if that's the case, then so the proposal that the resolution would be that it be agreed to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with the appointment of Suki Kalarai to the office of Chair of the LLD London Legacy Development Corporation. Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you. A letter will be sent to the Mayor following this meeting to confirm the committee's recommendation. And as I have no other business today, that concludes today's meeting.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London